So, what else do governments need to do to make sure that AI is applied responsibly, equitably, and justly for climate action? Right? We've been looking at specific sectors for recommending government role and action. So this is on the item we call research and innovation funding. Governments have to ensure decisions on research and innovation funding at the intersection of AI and climate. Uh, It's only 11 o'clock, but I'm already hungry because I don't eat breakfast. Anyway, ensure decisions on research and innovation funding at the intersection of AI and climate are impact driven rather than technology driven. So you want to reduce impacts of climate change and not just focus on how great AI is in doing something. Accommodate AI within wider climate grand challenges, such as managing the nexus, for example, between food, water, and energy, and also health, and so on. So many grand challenges we already talked about in the previous report. Develop targeted AI for climate challenges where AI can offer particularly high impact results. What do we mean? So AI for electricity supply and demand forecasting, AI for accelerated material science, for example, renewable energy, electricity storage, or alternative fuels. We talked about this before as well. AI for carbon stock estimation from satellite imagery. So again, this is going more into what AI can do, but just remember that government has to make sure that innovation and funding for these actually happen. Innovation funding for AI for climate solutions should encourage open AI IP, intellectual properties, open data, and open model development. This is great, but how do you make sure of that? That's not always clear. Implementation is another thing. These are just recommendations. Innovation funding for AI for climate solutions should foster greater diversity and equity in the AI for climate community. Okay, fund the development of compute and simulation assets for AI for climate research. So AI for climate here, I don't know if you can see it, it is written as AI-for-climate, so AI for climate, that's what we are meaning here. Okay, this crow friend of mine is here. He sits here every day for hours and sometimes crows. Today he's busy eating something. Okay, so deploy. So obviously governments also have to do data and digital infrastructure, which we will look at in a minute. Deploy AI for climate innovation support in a manner that aligns the incentives of innovation and market incumbents. Okay, there is currently a risk that government innovation grants are being spent on pilot projects that have no potential to become commercially viable because there is no available route to market. This is discussed further in deployment and systems integration. So academic research can go on, and we are not always used to thinking about whether it will make it to the market, whether it will be economically viable. Often we are focused on publications, and when we say applied research, it just means it's addressing some problem like this, but still we don't worry about it in an end-to-end fashion, but governments have to make sure of that at the funding level. Channel primarily AI research and innovation funding rather than climate funding to develop energy efficient AI. So you cannot make energy efficient AI as part of the climate funding because climate experts are focused on certain things, but AI experts have to start worrying about energy efficiency of AI and minimizing AI's impact on climate change itself, right? So next up is deployment and systems integration, as we mentioned before. Here the recommendations are like this. Embed digitalization and AI experts into governmental climate policy teams and advisor groups so that you have a synergy between these, and instead of working in silos from the beginning. Launch digital innovation pathway initiatives with industries in climate relevant sectors. So, it sounds interesting and nice, but again, you have to develop innovation pathways and business models that can support digital and AI projects throughout their whole journey from concept to scaled solution. Otherwise, it may not happen. If you do research separately and tell someone to adapt it, it may not happen. But if you build in, co-produce with the industries that are supposed to use it in the end, then success is much more guaranteed or much more certain. Support for sandboxes, test beds, pilots, and demonstration projects should be expedited such that pilots should be allowed to proceed ahead of regulatory approval for the final proposed solution. So anything that goes out and gets implemented outside the government boundaries also needs all kinds of regulatory approvals, environmental safety concerns, and so on. In this case, AI has to be consistent with climate action. Governments and regulated industries should set up and co-fund public-private investment groups to co-invest in startups offering digital services to regulated industries. So that's kind of a big co-investment and co-funding, but you get the idea. Develop cross-sectoral innovation centers to incubate AI for climate projects, facilitate collaborations, and build a shared understanding of opportunities and needs among a diverse set of stakeholders. So companies also can be focused just on auto industry and they worry about efficiency to the extent there is a government regulation, and then energy supply, charging stations, or phasing out fossil fuels, roads, infrastructure, everything is then split into different responsibilities. But cross-sectoral innovation to manage AI for climate action is very essential also from the beginning, right? Develop and maintain non-commercial public interest applications. So there are some areas where there are no commercial incentives to support the development of AI for climate solutions, and in these areas there is a need for governments and international organizations to go beyond providing a facilitating environment and the right incentives, and to actually providing funding, infrastructure, and other support for the development of specific applications. Examples that governments should consider providing ongoing support for include AI-enabled international forest monitoring service for carbon stock estimation and deforestation monitoring. So cross-border, who is responsible? If you manage differently, you will end up with if you manage separately, you will end up with a different result than having a coordinated monitoring and reporting. What is the next one? AI-enabled food and water risk monitoring service. Who should worry about this? Of course, government has to build an infrastructure to worry about it. AI-enabled international emissions monitoring service and AI for policy impact planning and assessment service, and so on. Let's read one more. Reducing AI's negative impacts on the climate. What are the recommendations? Avoid direct governmental funding for AI applications that run counter to climate goals. So AI methods designed specifically for oil and gas exploration are not something that will worry about emissions, so you have to do that yourself before AI is funded and so on. Moreover, existing or proposed regulations pertaining to high-risk AI systems should consider including the impact on climate and the environment in how they define risks, and again there you have to worry about equity, justice, and so on. Make climate change a central consideration when fostering the development of AI-enabled technologies. AI can do a lot of things, and it's very easy to use it to do things efficiently and help the customers, but unless they are climate friendly, they are going to be counterproductive. Okay? Ensure that cloud compute is appropriately included in reporting and carbon pricing policies, because cloud computing is tremendously energy intensive and water intensive. Many big companies like Facebook, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon are going to renewable energy for their cloud services, not because they are being environmentally friendly, just because their bills from energy can be supremely high and you cannot pass all that cost to customers. So going renewable is one way to reduce their own bills. Procure AI and compute services only from companies that have signed up to a net zero target covering scopes 1, 2, and 3, which I mentioned in the executive summary. But again, here the idea is who is going to make sure that companies have signed up to a net zero target, but what is their transparency reporting and what is their ability to allow evaluation. There is an organization that tracks corporate transparency in these climate action goals they announce, and very few are actually complying. It's mostly greenwashing. Okay. Sorry. Assessing AI's overall impacts on climate change, the climate itself, then set reporting requirements where appropriate for the life cycle emissions associated with the development and use of AI. So government has to set those regulations. Ensure funding for research in developing impact assessment methodology and gathering relevant information. So impact assessment community, in particular researchers concerned with information and communication technologies and computing, will be invaluable for tackling this problem, particularly in helping develop and standardized methodologies. Machine learning researchers can provide technical knowledge of AI systems to enable meaningful impact assessment. Ensure funding and capacity for impartial third-party impact assessment. So you cannot certify yourself as having minimal impact or no impact or net zero without having this kind of transparency to third-party impact assessment. Set methodological standards for impact assessments at the national and international level so that global regulations keep up. Okay, let me do another near real-time adjustment to see how far we are. We are only 12 minutes, so let's keep going, folks. And we are getting close, but you can see that I'm being very brief and not reading most of the text, but you can read and I'm making the most important points, so it's okay. Capacity building. To address the bottlenecks identified before, we recommend that governments take the following actions to improve education and literacy and to build research, development, deployment, and governance capacity at the nexus of AI and climate change. As AI is coming into all manufacturing processes and optimizing energy and production processes, etc., there's a constant threat of people losing jobs. But even in this context, we have to train people to use the AI tools, but also upskill people who are already in some jobs that are related to make sure that they don't get phased out of their job because of AI. And this is critical because more and more it's obvious that when people lose jobs and think that the system is not working for them, then they make crazy choices in elections. Okay. Education and literacy, then. Rapidly implement large-scale AI literacy and upskilling programs for policymakers, leaders in climate-relevant industries, and the civil society. So policymakers themselves have to be trained in AI and what to watch out for. But this policymaker is kind of a loose terminology. Hopefully we are meaning that they are elected officials who are seeking advice from experts and know what the experts are saying enough to communicate so that they are not completely clueless about AI literacy or AI. Fund interdisciplinary higher education, research and professional programs, which many universities are already doing because it's got a lot of job potentials. Incorporate curricular elements on data and on climate into primary, secondary and higher education, including both technical and socio-technical components. This is already happening as well, but again we have to make sure there is equal access to such education and everybody is getting trained if they want. Ensure global access, so that's the part about equity. Advancing further, research, development, deployment and governance capacity under capacity building. So we are still under capacity building. Fund or facilitate secondment programs for AI experts within climate relevant sectors so that they know what they are doing is affecting climate in both positive and potentially negative ways, so they know what to avoid. Fund or incentivize the creation of trusted AI for climate solutions providers and auditors. seem obvious, but still worth reading the bullets at least. There are details under them. For example, governments can play an important role by providing financial incentives for the creation of trusted entities and, where appropriate, creating public solutions providers that can enable organizations in climate-relevant sectors to experiment with AI approaches without undue financial or institutional risk. You want everybody to assimilate AI to make their operations smoother, better, less energy intensive, and so on, but they need funding to adopt these things. Develop and or facilitate sharing of standards for scoping, developing, deploying, maintaining, and evaluating AI for climate work. So, sorry, evaluating AI for climate work. You get the point. But again, if AI is considered as a good thing for climate action and government wants to do it, then it comes down to its governance and responsibility to develop and facilitate the sharing of standards for all these things like scoping, developing, deploying, maintaining, and evaluating. Finally, develop and employ tools and instruments for monitoring, impact assessment, benchmarking, and certification of AI for climate solutions and for climate impact assessment of AI. So given the rapidly evolving nature of the AI and AI for climate spaces, there is a danger that policy and governance approaches may lag progress in these areas. This is very true. Many startups are going gung-ho with AI, providing services for every sector, but are they being consistent with climate action? That's where government has to rapidly step in and keep up as well. Such tools and instruments could enable governments to more effectively monitor and track developments and proactively develop regulations and incentives on that basis, and not just let market forces take the system in some direction, which may end up being counterproductive to government's climate action and what is needed as a whole for humanity. How much more have I left? I have enough for another podcast, so let's leave it here for now, and we'll come back and look at international collaboration and a few more items in terms of recommendations on using AI for climate actions by the governments, what governments can do for making this happen. Okay, see you in the last podcast.